show for all your latest UFC news and rumors. It's Brian Coyle. It's Sean Stanley. It's the TFM Live podcast. And it's now.
What's going on, everybody, and welcome to TFM Live, the official podcast of the FullMountMMA.com. This is the 6th edition of the podcast. I am Brian Coyle, joined alongside internet Skype-wise, because we are 1,000 miles away, but we'll still be talking with as much energy as possible if we were just sitting across the table from one another. Sean Stanley, how are you doing, my friend?
I'm doing fantastic. This has been it's a busy week here for some MMA news.
Yeah, and we thought UFC 192 would be the biggest news of the day. Well, we'll get to that, but there's a lot more stuff that kind of precedes it, believe it or not, the week leading up to the UFC's 192nd pay-per-view, which features Daniel Cormier and Alexander Gustafson, and the main event live from the Toyota Center in Houston, Texans this Saturday night. No one's talking about the two guys in the light heavyweight championship fight because somebody else in the light heavyweight division made news. Jon Bones Jones, considered, the greatest pound-for-pound fighter in recent history of the UFC, will avoid jail time after pleading guilty to leaving the scene of an accident in court in New Mexico on Tuesday. He was granted a conditional release by Judge Charles Brown of the I'm going to butcher this name. It's in New Mexico County, 2nd Judicial District Court, because I don't want to try to pronounce that town again, because I'll just mess up. Anyway, is a release which features up to 18 months of supervised probation and no jail time. As part of his plea deal, Jones must also make 72 appearances doing charity work, as well as speaking to youth at various local boys and girls clubs and schools. No travel restrictions will be placed upon him. Remember, he was charged with a felony after leaving the scene of an accident and left a pregnant woman injured in April. Now, before we get into any of the repercussions as far to fights in the UFC, and they're both sides released statements today on Tuesday talking about the incident. Sean, what do you think of just the fact we've seen Jon Bones Jones go down? He was a troubled individual, not the fact that he's just a bad guy, but he's repeatedly made bad decisions kind of in the past couple years. He had he got popped for cocaine. He went into rehab for a day, and then he said it was fine. And then you see stuff like this where he left the scene of an accident and ran back, grabbed a wad of cash, and there's allegedly marijuana around. What do you think of this whole scenario with Jones?
This is my issue with this thing, and I'm not saying that he needed to get jail time, but sometimes, and I'm not just saying it's because it's Jon Jones or anybody, but sometimes you have to hit that bottom to really get the full effect. And if you keep just getting, by with, we'll just give him probation. We'll just give him probation. I'm not saying you have to drop the hammer on him and try to, whatever, end his career or anything. But at the same time, he's had a troubled past, and it just seems like this is just another slap on the wrist. And is this something he's going to learn from? How many opportunities is he going to get? How much time does he need? He had everything in the UFC, and that still wasn't enough, and he threw it all away.
Yeah, here's the thing. Like you just mentioned, this is about Jon Jones, the person, first. The guy's a tremendous fighter. We know this. One of the best pound for pound. Defended the light heavyweight belt 9 times. But will this make a mark in Jon Jones's personal life, will this be a turning point for him and realize, I can't do this stuff anymore. I'm not only a representative of a much larger entity. I'm not only this larger than life personality that people look up to, that kids look up to. I want to get my life in order. Yeah. This was going down a path where it could have had a really bad result. And luckily the person who he injured in the accident has recovered from her injuries and all this kinds of stuff. But it's a clear wake-up call, and we'll see if this is enough to make Jones realize the fact that you can't do this. period, in your life. You can't do this. You've been handed a golden opportunity. You've been given the golden egg. And you can either drop it on the floor and have it shatter everywhere, or you can make something of your life. And I hope this puts Jones on the track to succeed. I think we all hope for that, rooting for Jon Jones as the person. His statement said, with regards to today's decision made by the court, I'm very happy to now be able to put this incident behind me. My actions caused pain and inconvenience in the lives of others, and for that I'm truly sorry, accept full responsibility. I've been working hard during this time away from my sport to grow and mature as a man and to ensure that nothing like this ever happens again. That is a great statement. Now go make it happen. That period. That's the way it's got to be. Now, the UFC also released a statement on the incident saying the UFC organization is aware that Jon Jones has reached a plea agreement with the authorities in Albuquerque, New Mexico this morning, stemming from charges with associated the motor vehicle accident earlier this year. As a result, UFC, through a Las Vegas-based law firm, Campbell and Williams, will thoroughly review the agreement before discussing Jones's possible reinstatement to return to competition, which is a long-winded ass statement to basically say, yeah, Jones will probably be fighting either at the Garden, which we'll explain a little bit later on, or at UFC 200. I mean, they're throwing him right back into the fire. There's no way they wait and like this is more than like all the T's are crossed and the I's are dotted, and Jones is going to be back fighting probably to regain his light heavyweight title from the winner of this fight on Saturday night. Am I wrong in this thinking?
No, I mean, I think if I'm not mistaken, I'm reading through this article real quick here, just trying to find some stuff. But it looked like Dana White back in May told Jim Rome basically that if he got his head on straight, whenever he gets his stuff together, he'd come right back and fight for the title.
Yeah, Dana White was actually in the courtroom.
Yeah,
on
he was
Tuesday.
there.
So, I mean, the UFC is supporting Jones, which, I mean, is good to have structure behind him. And now if he can, figure it out, we've got the return, one of the biggest returns of the biggest superstar in the sport. Now, Ronda Rousey and Conor McGregor have taken the ball and ran with it while Jones has been out. But make no mistake about it, Jones is the most dominant fighter right now, like, period. Like, his fight with Gustafson was close. It was a great fight, but everything else, this guy has been absolutely elite. And this is a third superstar that may be bigger than the other two. So this is great for the UFC if Jon Jones comes back. Now, will he be the same thing? We don't know. But what do you think of his return? Like, you say, because I'm in the case where you throw him back into the light heavyweight contention picture, because this guy was about to basically beat Rumble Johnson and then have super fights at heavyweight. So do you throw him right back in first fight? Do you feed him somebody first? Do you go right in? What do you think?
I mean, if you're going to do it at a venue like Madison Square Garden or UFC 200, I think you give him the belt. You give him the shot at the belt right there. If you're going to kind of walk him back in on another one, maybe you give him that, and maybe not the main event, but the co-main event against a lesser opponent, because Jones, his name will draw. Yes. But, I mean, it depends on what impact the UFC wants to make, or maybe it'll look at how he's looking in training or anything like that. But, I mean, I don't see why you wouldn't throw him back in there unless there's something that he's, he hasn't been training right, or he's too far out of shape to where he couldn't make it back in. But as dominant as a force as he is, but then again, which we'll get into in a little bit with 192 right around, things like that. I mean, how do you go about, telling somebody that, hey, you're gonna have to step back because this guy's coming back now?
Well, the thing is, I think here with this I think Jones will be thrown right in because he's been working out, he's been training, he's been doing all this stuff, and we just want to remind people this is a conditional release. The case isn't over. So he's got to go through all this stuff and complete all this stuff before the felony conviction is behind him, essentially. So if he slips up, he's done. Yeah. Period. There's going to be no leniency. And now if people are listening to this and we're talking about Madison Square Garden in April, they're probably thinking to themselves, what the hell are these guys talking about? MMA is illegal in New York.
We know something you don't. No, I'm just kidding.
I wish we were able to know that kind of stuff, that we could break it on TFM Live, the official podcast of the FullMountMMA.com, and I will shill for the website as much as possible because I am a company man. All right.
There you go.
I have to. So we have stories on Jon Jones, on the Madison Square Garden news, on UFC 192. We'll get into our picks later on. I'll explain why Daniel Cormier is the guy who I think wins that fight and retains his belt. But we'll get to that. The UFC announced an April 2016 event at Madison Square Garden. How is that possible? Well, here's the thing. They announced that they reserved the date at Madison Square Garden, April 23rd, 2016. And it's currently banned under very controversial New York law, as we all know. But in the release, the UFC said it will file an injunction to make an event happen at the world's most famous arena. Later this week, this is a quote from the press release that was sent out to multiple outlets, including MMAfighting.com, Fox Sports, and all of them. Later this week, the UFC will ask a federal judge to issue a preliminary injunction against the New York State officials enforcing its unconstitutional law. Without the injunction, the event at MSG will not be able to proceed. So this is the law that essentially bans MMA from happening in New York. The UFC stated that this law is out of date, too unclear for the public to understand. It's allowed regulators in New York to pick and choose arbitrarily what events they will permit, instead of having a blanket, essentially, law that bans boxing or allows boxing, MMA or whatever. So this comes on the heels of them suing New York State, saying that the New York, according to the Daily News, that the law is so badly written, neither ordinary persons nor state officials are able to say with any certainty what it permits or what it prohibits. And of course, we know Jon Jones is from New York. Chris Weidman is from New York. New York is the biggest media market in the entire world. And it's amazing that the UFC hasn't been able to tap into that yet. And the UFC has done this before, sued New York State. It didn't work, but it seems like they have a little bit more juice behind them, and this is like a preliminary attempt before they try to pass a law in the New York State Assembly. What do you think? This is a pretty gutsy move, like it's just immediately attacking New York State, because if you're filing an injunction through a federal court to go after state legislators, usually government doesn't like to fight government. So this is a pretty gutsy move. What do you think about this whole situation? First, the fact that we could have a fight in Madison Square Garden, and second, the whole how the UFC is going about it.
No, I mean, I guess you got to take a stand though if you're UFC and say, hey, we got to do something. I mean, Madison Square Garden's one of the Mecca arenas. I mean, to have a card there.
It is the Mecca. I live, 40 minutes away from it. It is the most. It may have been a dump about 3 years ago, but now that they've renovated it, it's now back to the grand state of things that it used to be.
Yeah, I mean, and then when you start looking at in 2011, they kind of go back to it and say that, it has nothing to do with mixed martial arts. The reason that we're not in New York, it has to do with, union stuff and things like that. I mean. I mean, it, like you said, government against government is usually not going to happen. But I mean, something's got to be done, and I guess UFC's saying, hey, look, we got to try at least take a chance and see what we can do about getting into New York. I mean, they're missing out on a big market right there.
Oh yeah, I mean, when you look at, they had a heavyweight title fight in Madison Square Garden for boxing. It didn't really draw, as much because boxing is a dying breed. They had WWE's second biggest events over the summer. We're at the Barclays Center, which is a big advantage. You hear a lot. I'm surprised the UFC is going to MSG because it's very expensive to put on a show at MSG because of the way all the unions work in regards to lighting and all of that. But this is an opportunity to be like, if they have a show at MSG and then they have UFC 200, this could be like one of the biggest launching points for the company ever. And if they have a deep enough roster to make both of those shows work, that if you put Jones' return fight on there and you put Weidman fighting underneath him, you're going to fill the seats in not even a half an hour when you release tickets. This is the kind of thing that could really be great.
Jones fighting for a title, too, on that return.
Oh, exactly. I mean, it can't get any bigger than Madison Square Garden. I don't say that as a New York homer. I'm saying it as a straight fact.
Sure you don't. Sure you don't.
I mean, was there anywhere else? I mean, Las Vegas is great. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah, but I mean, every event is in Vegas. They got to start getting, to me, if they want to expand the product, you got to start hitting some different venues and just getting out there. Everything being in Vegas, I mean, it just doesn't have the same appeal. I mean, hey, yeah, great, we're in the Garden Arena in Vegas again. Yay, we're in the Garden Arena in Vegas. It just
Well, I like when they go to
seems to
Chicago.
there.
Chicago's a great market to do. The Orlando fight, I think, is a great idea. If they did something in Miami, I think that would be a great idea as well. And I'm not saying that because you're very close to,
Yeah,
the
I would
American
like it
Airlines.
myself, but I think what they need to start doing and what they're kind of doing now with these fight nights, they're kind of testing areas. Okay, if they draw good, then maybe, I mean, WWE kind of did this with house shows, quote
Yes.
unquote, their house shows. They test the market. Okay, we did good. Okay, we'll give them a SmackDown. Okay, the
Yeah.
SmackDown did good. Okay, we give them a Raw. The Raw
Yeah.
does good. Now we bring the pay-per-view there. And that's kind of how they do it. And then you can see now they're starting to do that with the fight night, the fight pass. You got the small, I won't say smaller cards, but those cards in those areas, and it's a chance to see, can that area draw?
And it's very interesting you say that because having they have had the fights in Boston, which have been great. They're going to Dublin, even though Conor McGregor's not on that card. That card is still going to be big as can be. And what the UFC has to realize, which I think they're starting to, is when you go to certain places and you book certain fighters, you get certain crowd reactions, and just the fact that the crowd, I'm just going to put it bluntly, the crowd at the Shark Tank for Bellator's Dynamite is going to be different than the crowd that's in Philly for a UFC fight night, or the crowd that's in Newark, or a crowd that's going to be in possibly Madison Square Garden. Like, if you want these big reactions, which the UFC's, I mean, the whole reason why the UFC's got mainstream culture, like mainstream culture likes the UFC, and the whole reason why mainstream culture likes combat sports is for that holy bleep moment where the crowd erupts and somebody gets knocked out or somebody taps or whatever. And the best possible places you're going to get that tend to be these Chicago's, Philly, New York. Like, that's the way it's going to be. So if you can tap into this East Coast market more than you can, instead of having every third, fourth show in Vegas, like, I like that they're going to Houston, Texas for this fight. It's a different market. It can draw more, and I think it's a great card. So if they can finally unlock New York, and then you get this big card, and people hear, oh, they're in New York. Maybe there's a card in my area coming up. I think it could be great. But again, we're going to have to hold our breath because, unfortunately, this kind of stuff, we get really excited about it, and we just have a nice conversation about it. And then what typically happens, Sean?
Nothing.
Yes. So,
But you're talking about crowd reaction, and I know we're going to get into it in a little bit, maybe a little bit later, or maybe right now that I'm probably going to bring this up. But did you notice how UFC was kind of combating the non-aggressive style of the Japanese crowd?
yes, I found the Japanese crowd to be very interesting, given the fact they were very respectful in the pre-fight intros, and you'd get they'd be very quiet when Bruce Buffer was going, like, saying the names, and then all of a sudden you'd get that typical Japanese round of applause. I don't know how else to put it. It's very polite, but then you would get like the crowd would slowly build and build and build. So it was very interesting. It was like the Japanese crowds seem to be very analytical when it comes to a fight. They're not just going, like, if you compared a Japanese crowd and a Philly crowd, you get a very different class of person in both of those shows.
Yeah, I mean, I know people that have went over there to do like wrestling and stuff, and they say it's totally different because you can't feed off of a crowd there.
Yes,
the crowd is so respectful. It's like they applaud for certain moves, and then they'll really just applaud and then stop. It's like,
yeah,
okay, and then that's kind of like, and you could hear I forgot who it was. Was it Kenny Florian, and who else was on the call? I forgot who else was on the call.
It was Brian Stan and John Anik.
Yeah, and they were just every time they would just say, the the quiet, like not quiet, but they were just trying to like let everybody know that, you know, the crowd was not. It's not that they weren't into the fight, but they're very polite, and they're just kind of pointing that out because I think
Yes.
everybody's gotten so used to the UFC crowd kind of being rowdy for the fights that now it's like, wait a minute, okay, I'm watching this pay-per-view and I don't hear the crowd, but it's because it's a whole different ballgame. And I think it's going to start getting that way when you go to different areas that you haven't been to.
Yeah, I mean, you get an unruly crowd in Brazil, and you get a very respectful crowd in Japan, and you get vamos here chants. Like it's just you have to learn. The UFC has learned how to kind of mix and match when it comes to these style of fights. Josh Barnett, former Pride fighter, comes out to Fist of the North Star's theme song, like, which is amazing, by the way. I just want to point that out. But like, they know what they're doing, and just keep building and keep capitalizing on this. And I think they're going to do great. And once they unlock New York, who knows what can happen. But you mentioned UFC Japan. Let's break it down a little bit, because there were some takeaways, at least for me. I wrote an article on the fullmountmma.com that you can check out. There's 3 takeaways essentially from UFC Japan. And there's a couple ways we can go here. I want to talk about the 2 co-main events, Gegard Mousasi and Uriah Hall. Let's start with the co-main event. I don't know the video game cheat code that Uriah Hall uses to do the spinning heel kick into the flying knee, but that was insane. It was incredibly accurate. And if you haven't seen the video, just go watch it, because Hall, after being, I mean, he was not dominated in the first round by Mousasi, but he clearly Gegard was scoring points left and right, essentially, and Hall was on his back burner. He was fighting off the ground. And the thing with Hall is, we've always seen, everyone remembers the tough 17 crazy knockout that shocked everybody, and this guy was prime time. This could be the next superstar, and he kind of just kind of fizzled his way recently. And now he got this fight against Gegard Mousasi, who was ranked number 6 at the time. And Mousasi's 30 years old, but he's been in 37 fights. So, I mean, this guy he's a gatekeeper, essentially, I think is the best word to put it. But he was still also vying for a potential title shot down the line with the Michael Bispings. He was kind of that sort of rank. And Hall, out of nowhere, in the second round, lands a spinning heel kick, which plants Mousasi right in the butt. You can't hit it better than that. And without hesitating, so it's he knew it was coming. And people will say it's a fluke hit or whatever. Hall jumped on the opportunity, threw a flying knee, threw a couple fists later, gets the stoppage. And this is a thing that could jumpstart Uriah Hall. What are your thoughts on this?
No, 100%. I mean, when I saw it, I was like, whoa, wait, what happened? And then when they slowed it down, and you could see the kick land and the heel right into the face, and then how quickly he jumped on that to end that fight. It just, I mean, I don't even know where to go from there, because when he ended that fight, I was just like, wow.
Yeah,
Not
it was one of those.
Had dominated him, though, but I mean, it looked like it would be a lot more. It looked like kind of like I was going to go lopsided the other way. And then when he landed that, it was just, wow. And
I say this, just throwing this out there, because Hall has taken short fights recently. Michael Bisping, official news, pulled out of UFC 193 with an elbow injury. So Robert Whittaker is left opponentless right now at the middleweight division. Whittaker's undefeated. Why not? If Hall wants to keep his momentum going and he feels comfortable fighting, why not go to fight in a big stadium in Australia, which is supposedly doing gangbusters at the box office right now, according to the UFC. So we might actually break the attendance record from Toronto back in the day with GSP and Jake Shields. I think this is an opportunity that maybe you could see Uriah Hall just jump at the chance, and then really because people are already saying fluke on this guy. If you go in there and you beat somebody good, again, you can throw yourself in the mix here. Middleweight's a very exciting division when you get Jakari Souza and you get Yoel Romero underneath. Rockhold and Weidman are obviously up at the top there, but I think this is a real opportunity for Hall. And on the other side of the coin, Musasi's title hopes for I don't know how long are out the window here, right?
Yeah, no, you definitely can't. Not after that showing.
He was the biggest money favorite, by the way. I think it was like minus 375 or something like that. And
That's why they fight in the octagon.
that's why they do it. I mean, he's 4-3 in the UFC now. And he's essentially going to have to start from the back of the pack. And he's great, but he had never been knocked out before to Hall. And it's just one of those things. It's a fluke. He'll get back on track and he'll start winning some fights again. Or is this the guy's got a lot of tread on the tires? So does he become a gatekeeper of sorts at 185? And another guy, unfortunately, do you want to go with the positive aspect of the main event or the negative aspect of the main event first?
Let's start with the negative. Now we can build up.
Okay, so everybody likes watching Big Country fight. Roy Nelson's fun. Like, the dude is 261 pounds, and you can see all 261 pounds of Roy Nelson.
And then some.
In the octagon. And this guy, he's indestructible. That's the first thing. He got a steel chin, which Josh Barnett was pounding away on the entire fight. But Big Country, no problem there. And he pulled out some kind of different moves. He's pulled off a takedown. He was going for submissions. Like, we don't see this. And we found out he had a broken hand later on. And it's tough as he is and as fun as he is to watch, he's lost 5 out of his last 6. The only guy he's ever beaten in the past 2.5 years is Minotauro Nogueira. And Josh Barnett dominated that fight. And the exception, Nelson's still fun. But, he's nothing more than like feed him to a young guy who you think is coming up. And if he gets past Nelson, okay, we can give him a real fight at this point, right?
Yeah, 100%. I'm looking at some tweets from the fight, and Josh Barnett's 146 significant strikes landed are a new single fight heavyweight record.
Wow.
And his 95 significant clinch strikes are also a new single fight UFC record.
His dirty boxing was a thing of beauty. I don't know if that's an oxymoron or not, because it was incredible. Like, him in the clinch was
those short elbows were landing too.
Yeah, the knees, the dirty boxing, the punches. He was all over Roy Nelson. And any other dude would have been knocked out, gone to the ground. Nelson's mouthpiece at one point came out. He bent down to pick it up while he was getting punched in the face and then put it back in. So that shows you what happens there. And Josh Barnett is an interesting case. He's been out for 21 months. He hasn't had a win in 25 months. And now when you look at him, this is a guy who looked lean, mean, fighting machine, dude. Like, we could throw him in against Andrei Arlovsky right now. Like, that would be the fight to make. Problem is, he reportedly is going to look into movie offers because that pays more, and which would be cool for the War Master. The division is full of heavyweights that are old, so it's certainly not something surprising. But if he goes against a guy like Arlovsky and wins, you can elevate yourself to the title match and with just one win with some of these guys at this point, right?
No, yeah, most definitely. But I'm wondering if maybe since he saw how difficult of a time he had with Big Country there, if he didn't start questioning some of, given Big Country's very, tough chin and things like that. But, this is a guy who's been out for almost I'm trying to read here, like 637 days since a loss to Travis Brown. So Barnett, maybe he started thinking like, hey, you know what? Maybe I don't have to be the top of what I need to be, and start looking at movies.
Well, if I was just he was essentially punching a rock for 25 minutes.
Oh, we know this, but I think he thought that he was going to be able to go in there and put him down. And I think when he saw that he wasn't able to, he started thinking about it. But we've talked about this before. The heavyweight division is kind of like a veteran. It's almost all veterans. When you look at some of the guys up toward the top and things like that, it's just almost like revival central for the heavyweight division.
It really is. And I mean, when you look at the rankings, these are all blasts from the past as I'm pulling them up here. Like, when you're looking at these guys, Velasquez is one of the youngest guys here. Because you got Dos Santos, you got Stipe Miocic, you got Arlovsky, you got Brown, you got Barnett, you got Ben Rothwell, who don't sleep on Ben Rothwell. That he's an interesting dude, number one. And number two, he's been on a roll. You got Overeem. You got the Overeem Dos Santos fight in December. Like, this is a fun division, and this was a fun division 6 years ago. It's like the same dudes, with the exception of maybe Brock Lesnar, going at it. And I think it's fun. And I think Barnett it'd be a great opportunity for him if he could get Arlovsky. But if not, then so be it at that point.
Yeah, it's interesting though how the heavyweight division's kind of taken a swing to where now it's. I don't know if it's because everybody knows that one loss could be their one that gets them out of the title picture.
Yeah,
it seems like a lot of them now are going the distance. I mean, I knew this one would probably go. I didn't think it would go 5 because I didn't think Big Country would be able to go all 5 just because of. Mm-hmm. And again, I let the book. I judged the book by the cover, but I just think that now everybody's fighting not to lose, so you don't get those. Usually, you see that heavyweight and you're like, oh, here we go. It's going to be over in 1 to 2 rounds. You know it. You're waiting for that train wreck, and you're not really getting that these days.
Yeah, but hey, it was a fun night of fights.
Yes,
they did well in Japan. They did below average viewership, but it had some stiff competition, and it was not by much. So, this is we expected with the UFC. The ratings are going to be a little bit below the average mark because, you have college football now on Saturdays, and you have this kinds of stuff going on. And it was actually a late game. They were going up against UCLA and Arizona. So,
it was a big matchup too, by the way.
Mm-hmm. So we'll see how it goes from now. But this weekend at UFC 192, we got a big deal going on. I'll just go through. We'll cover since we don't got too much time. I know we got hard outs here. Let's start with Rashad Evans and Ryan Bader, because Bader was a guy who was being looked at for the title fight, because him and DC, put it this way, were not the best of friends recently, going at one another. But what do you think of Rashad Evans, of course, of the Black Zillions, and Ryan Bader as the third to last fight on this card? And essentially, when you look at the light heavyweight division, this could be like a bump up. I mean, before we knew Jones was coming back, this could have been a fight that the winner would get a title shot, or it could be next in line behind Jones or whatever. How do you see this fight kind of going?
I mean, the weird thing is, I wrote an article today on Rashad Evans, Sugar Rashad Evans, which is at thefullmountmma.com. I didn't even realize that, honestly, that he'd been out for almost 2 years.
Yeah. He's just an accepted personality now.
Yeah, I guess because you see him on the UFC pre-shows, the tonights, the fights, the different things like that. I didn't realize that he had been missing. The last fight was against Chael Sonnen in 2013.
Yeah.
And that was a round 1 finish. So, I mean, I don't know what you're going to get with Rashad Evans. It's going to be interesting to see. I mean, he always comes in shape and ready to go. But, I mean, he's fighting a guy, looking right here, he's on a 4-fight win streak here. And,
Ryan Bader.
The Ryan Bader here. I mean, he's not fighting a slouch here. I mean, Bader's 20-4. He's 24-3-1. I mean, you're looking at, two good light heavyweights here that, I don't know what's going to happen with Sugar Rush Evans, because 2 knee injuries pulled him out of his last 2 fights, and it's kept him sidelined for 2 years. A lot can change in 2 years. He could totally have maybe reinvented himself in 2 years since you haven't seen him fight. So you don't even know what Rashad Evans you're going to get in this fight if you're Bader going in. Because it's not like you can watch film. You can watch film of what he did, but he could have had a different training, a different, camp, and he could be a whole different Sugar Rashad Evans come Saturday night.
I mean, and it's not been all roses between Bader and Evans either, because, I mean, Bader a couple months ago was fat shaming essentially Sugar Rashad Evans on Twitter, and we talked about and he basically saying he looked like Cormier, which is a double shot. And Bader, for all the smack talk, the guy's a good fighter, and it's a 2-year layoff, like you mentioned, for Evans. I'm leaning towards Bader in this, just simply the fact. I mean, he's a fresher guy. He's rising up the ranks, but don't be surprised if Shug, kind of gets on back on track again. So I'm going Bader here. You going Evans?
I'm going to go Evans for this reason.
Okay.
Rashad Evans is 5-0 against fighters who previously faced his former teammate Keith Jardine. Those fighters: Quentin Jackson, Stephan Bonner, Thiago Silva, Chuck Liddell, and Forrest Griffin.
Those guys are all better than Ryan Bader probably will ever be. But I mean, we'll see how
that 2-week layoff is laying heavy on me right now, but I'm going to go with Sugar Rashad Evans.
Mm-hmm. Bader is the underdog at plus 135. Going into a fight now, I think is the fight of the night. I don't care what anybody thinks. These welterweights are going to throw down Johnny Big Rig Hendricks, Tyron Woodley. Just tell me what you think of this fight. I'm so excited for welterweight because it's like these two especially, and you know how Big Rig works, and Woodley's incredibly fast and powerful. How do you see this fight going?
I'm gonna go Hendricks just because I think Hendricks should have been, got another shot, but I understand the powers that be, they want to Condit again, so that's there. But I think he's gonna stop Woodley. I honestly think he's gonna stop him.
I don't know. I really like the way Hendricks fights, and like you said, this was a guy who probably deserved a rematch against Robbie Lawler. Carlos Condit, I think, is the bigger draw personally, and I think he's possibly a better fighter. But there's an interesting storyline between these two guys, because I mean, there was a great story by Brett Okamoto from ESPN.com. 10 years ago, Hendricks and Woodley faced off at a wrestling tournament in Omaha, Nebraska. And this is a moment that has been called the bite, because Woodley had hold of Hendricks' right leg at one point, and they were sprawling. And the final seconds of one of the wrestling periods ticked off. Hendricks reached across his left arm and placed his hand in the vicinity of Woodley's mouth. And then there's video of the match where he kind of reaches back and Woodley bit him. So this is a fight 10 years in the making, based off their amateur wrestling careers.
Wow.
Because Hendricks went to Oklahoma State and Woodley went to Missouri. And I just find it funny, like, this far back, you get two guys who are the most dangerous fighters, and just going back to just college wrestling, these guys have known each other for a while. And I think it's going to be a fun fight. I got Big Rig here. I got it really close, though. I don't feel good about it. He's a big favorite here at minus 335. But I don't know, man. I just think this is going to be one of these slug it out, just like Lawler and McDonald was, where you're going to get two guys that won't back down. And it's only a 3-round fight. But I think it goes all 3 rounds, and these guys are swinging to the end. I don't think anybody can knock each other out of here. I think these guys are too tough.
I think they're too tough, but I think Hendricks is going to catch him somehow, and I think it's going to be a quick, like, out of nowhere type thing where he's going to get trapped in something and it's going to be a finish. It's not like he's going to dominate him, and I just think that there's going to be mistakes made, and I see Hendricks being able to be there for the stop.
The thing is with Hendricks, he's much more of a I think his punching is cleaner. He's got the technique better. But Woodley, I don't know. He's such a wild card to me, man. He's so fast and so strong. Yeah, I think Woodley wins.
Remember, Woodley beat Carlos Condit on a Hendricks Lawler card, UFC 171.
So, I mean, again, this is the division where if you put Tyron Woodley against Robbie Lawler, I wouldn't know who to pick. I'd probably go with Lawler. If you put Carlos Condit against Hendricks, I wouldn't feel good about either. I would take Condit, but I wouldn't feel good about it. This is how tight welterweight is right now. And this is probably half the reason why a lot of people are not saying it. I don't think GSP needs to come back and regain his title because he sees all these guys. And, you know what? I can hang back for a little bit. I've done my job because he's like his legacy is well left in that division, but there are a bunch of young guys, and then there's a couple older fighters like Hendricks taking the mantle back. I think the welterweight division is fine from here on. Yes. I got Hendricks. You got Hendricks as well?
I'm taking Hendricks as well.
All right. And now let's close out the show with the main event of the evening. Daniel Cormier versus Alexander Gustafson. Sean, I want to get your opinion on it first because I kind of spoiled mine in the beginning, and I also wrote an article explaining why Daniel Cormier will win. So what are your thoughts just on this fight on its surface?
Here's what I got. Gustafson looked great against Jones.
Which was a loss.
Which was a loss. I mean, I know it's been documented. I know it's been spoken of. You know, it's great you look great in a loss. But
yes.
And look, my article is, you know, which will be coming out tomorrow, is my reasons why Gustafson can win this fight. And one of those is he's got the wingspan of a 747.
This is true. This is a true statement. He's got a 79-inch reach.
Yeah, Cormier is going to have to get inside.
Mm-hmm.
And it really comes down to strategy. I mean, I'm not saying Cormier is, you know, I mean, he's documented. He's a great wrestler. So if he get inside, I mean, Gustafson's going to have a long night. But if he can keep him, you know, distance-wise and try to get that game plan that he did with Jon Jones and frustrate him and aggravate him, I mean, DC could make a mistake and Gustafson could be walking out the light heavyweight champion of the world.
See, now, are you picking Gustafson here before we get any further? I know you wrote the article. It will come out tomorrow on the PullMountainMMA.com. But are you picking him to win?
My heart is with DC.
See, here's the thing.
If I had to put money on the fight, I'm going with DC. But yeah, I got to stick with my article.
Of course. We show both sides. We give the people all the information that they need so they can make their own decisions and root for whoever they want and put money on whoever they want, whatever they want to do. Here's the thing with Gustafson. He's good. Don't get me wrong. But his last winning is against Jimmy Manuwa, who, I mean, he's had some pretty – in his last 2 out of 3 fights – he got rocked by Alexander Gustafson and then got annihilated by Anthony Rumble Johnson. So I think Jimmy Manuwa isn't the measuring stick that we want to use in the light heavyweight division, at least right now. And I like him as a fighter too. But like you mentioned, Gustafson's got that massive reach, and if he can keep Cormier away, it's great. And the Mauler can go to work. I don't think he can do that though. I don't like picking fighters. This is just a personal thing of mine who are essentially swatting guys away, like when they're keeping their reach. And I mean, as a short person, my entire life, I can tell you, it's sometimes an advantage because you can get in tight. Cormier might take a couple shots coming in, but I like Daniel Cormier in this fight, and like I wrote in my article, for the fact that he is an Olympic caliber wrestler. Cormier, with all of the stuff that he gets, is 15-1. He's only lost to Jon Jones, which, I mean, that's not a bad guy to lose to if that's your only loss. If he can keep up the tempo, and now people make fun of Cormier because the way he looks, he's a former heavyweight. He's a wider individual. I'll put it in that sense.
Mm-hmm.
And
he's stocky.
Yes, I'm a fan of stocky people as a stocky person. So the way Cormier fights, he keeps pressure on his opponents, and he sucks the life out of them. It may not be the most entertaining thing, but if Cormier can get inside, take a couple punches, take him, and Cormier throws people, man. He suplexes people. Like this, like it's simply
Gustafson
insane.
Does get lazy too. He'll get lazy if he drops his guard.
Yes,
he could catch one from Cormier.
And Cormier, I like the way he fights. He fights smart. He doesn't fight hard. He fights smart, and he'll utilize his weight distribution when he's on the ground on top of guys. It will suck the life out of people. And if you're going to be the aggressor, as we learned in the Mendez-McGregor fight, you got to have the cardio to do so.
Yeah.
And like when Mendez was on top of McGregor, Conor was obviously, I mean, he had a full training camp compared to Chad, but that's besides the point. It takes energy laying on top than just as much as it is to try to escape. But if you got a better cardio, like I think Cormier does, I think he can make this a home game essentially for himself. He can take Gustafson to the ground. He can bash him. He can switch into a submission. He can throw him. He can beat him up. He doesn't have to, and he's a decent stand-up fighter as well. Gustafson has got these long punches and these long kicks, and he's really dangerous. But if Cormier can nullify that, which he did against Rumble, and I think Rumble's a better fighter than Gustafson.
Yeah, I agree.
I mean, so I think this is set up. This is as much as people want to illustrate the mismatch and Gustafson's bigger and taller and longer. I think it benefits Cormier.
Well, I think that that's the only thing that benefits Gustafson in this whole fight, though, is that reach. That's, they're trying to give him something to hang on to, I think, almost. I mean, he's lost. If you look at this, honestly, let's look at this. He's lost 2 out of his last 3 fights.
Yes.
That one win, Jimmy Manuwa. And, I mean, he lost to Johnson first round. I mean, and he had the decision with Jon Jones. So, I mean, Gustafson, he had one fight on the big stage. Can he do that again? Mm-hmm. And will that be enough to beat Cormier? That wasn't enough to beat Jones.
One of the most impressive wins on his resume for Gustafson is Shogun. That was in 2012. Thiago Silva in 2012. I mean, he hasn't had a big fight. This is the first time he's fought twice in the same year since 2012, by the way, too. And his fight against Rumble was obviously in January of this year. So Gustafson's the kind of fighter where I just don't believe in the hype. And if he goes out and knocks out DC and we get Jones Gustafson for the title again, all power to him. But I think Cormier is just very good in everything. And I think he can dominate in more ways than Gustafson can. So I think when you look at the chances of somebody winning or not, I think it's Cormier's fight to lose. I really do. And he's the favorite at minus 325. We'll have all the odds up for UFC 192 if you're interested in that sort of thing coming up in the next couple of days.
Hey, did you know that in the light heavyweight history, Gustafson ranks number 3 in finishes?
Really?
Yep. You know the two in front of him?
There.
You know, Jon Jones and Chuck Liddell tied with 9. Wow. Gustafson has 6.
So there you go. I mean, this guy's an exciting fighter. And we're not throwing Gustafson on the bus here. He's got a good chance to win this fight. We just think Cormier's got a better chance to win this fight, essentially. So we'll see how it goes. I'm excited. I'm excited for Saturday night. It's a solid card. It's not superstardom. It's not November. It's not December by any means. And we'll talk about Cowboy versus Javier dos Anjos coming up as that fight gets closer, because there's a lot of news regarding Cowboy and Anthony Pettis and Javier dos Anjos and Cowboy's uproarious appearance on the Joe Rogan podcast, which I would recommend listening after you're done with this one, obviously. But I think we get a good fight night. What do you think on Saturday?
Oh, no, I'm excited. I want to see, we talked about the 3 fights there, but, I mean, there's some good fights there. You have Jessica Ai on there opening up again. There's some
Juliana Pena and Jessica Ai.
Mm-hmm.
There's one guy that's been talked up a lot. And I saw this from Ariel Helwani, and I saw this from a couple other people. There's somebody fighting on the Fight Pass card who apparently is getting a lot of buzz. And he's a young kid, 19-year-old Sage Northcutt, and he's on the Fight Pass card.
And he's a pretty boy.
Yes, he's the definition of a pretty boy. I mean, he's a minus 450 favorite against Francisco Trevino, and it's his debut fight in the UFC. So if you got Fight Pass, I recommend checking this kid out. I don't know too much about him. I can't say like I know like this kid's background or whatever, but I've been hearing a lot of stuff around him. So I think we're gonna keep an eye on him.
Yeah, I'm looking for the article right now because actually Dana White went to see a fight with him, and they were making fun of him when he was entering the cage, and then he did like 4 strikes, and they're like, "All right, we want to have
bang,
you,
bang, bang."
Yeah, we want to have you with us." And he's like, "It's the first kid that's ever shut me up."
Yeah, and that's a big deal to shut Dana White up. Dana's never at a loss for words. I'll tell you that much. So I think this is a fight where it's got a couple gems, but those 3 fights at the end are gonna be electric. Bader and Evans do not like each other. Hendricks and Woodley, it's gonna be the fight of the night. Mark it down. You can mark the tape. We can go back and play this over again next week when this happens, or if it doesn't happen. You can do that too, but I'm telling you right now, those guys are going to go for a war at welterweight because that's what's been happening. And I think we get a very interesting clash of styles come the main event time with Daniel Cormier retaining his light heavyweight belt. And of course, as in all poetic justice and storyline terms, we get Cormier Jones with an improved Cormier and a returning albatross that is Jon Jones. So I'm excited. I think it's all good.
Definitely. Did you know that the Dominic Cruz TJ Dillashaw fight has a home now?
That's official. It's going to be in Boston, right?
Yeah, Boston City Garden. Yep.
Oh,
it's going to be on Fox Sports 1.
On Fox Sports 1? Not on Fox?
It says Fox Sports 1 televised event.
Huh? So that fight, which is the TJ Dillashaw Dominic Cruz bantamweight title fight. Interesting. Because I know we had heard rumors about that for a while. It was all but confirmed at that point. But I mean, you want to talk about a fight that's gonna be hard to watch because it's just how fast these dudes are. Like when you watch Mighty Mouse, he's in fast motion the whole way down. But Anthony Pettis and Eddie Alvarez co-headline the UFC Boston.
Yeah, and that's gonna have Travis Brown, Matt Mitrione. And then Tim Bosch and Ed Herman.
Huh. So there you go. News that I even didn't know about. That was official. I mean, we had reported on Dillashaw Cruz a couple weeks ago.
Got a home today or something, they're saying.
Hey, there you go. All right, cool. A little breaking news to end the pod. Sean, is there anything else you want to talk about before we get out of here?
No, just check out thefullmountmma.com.
Yep.
And go there for
follow us on
news,
Twitter.
Rumors.
Yeah. Plenty. I mean, there's plenty of stuff. We're gonna have the odds come out. I've got a punchline article that's going to be good, and I know it's going to be good because of some of the crazy stuff that's happened this week already.
And I'll have the preview of 192 out on Friday.
Mm-hmm. And there could be a couple other mystery projects that I'm kind of floating around that if I don't get to for this pay-per-view, I definitely will for the November and December pay-per-views. I did a UFC for Dummies a while back for McGregor Mendez, and I think that might be coming back depending on the time and place, Sean. So it'll be very interesting. You can follow me on Twitter at @bcoyle11. I rant about football and MMA most of the time, and also I'm a traumatic Knicks fan. So if you want to bask in that glory or share in the sadness, you can do that as well with me on Twitter at @bcoyle11. Sean at SS Sports Talk.
Yeah, I cover a lot of South Florida sports. Unfortunately, a lot of much things. Sunday morning at 9:30, I'll be tweeting live about the Dolphins game in London with the Jets.
Fingers crossed, man. Fingers crossed on that one. So that will be interesting. So yeah, I mean, follow us on Twitter. But if you don't like us, but you like what we write, you don't have to listen to us talk. You can go to thefullmountmma.com and just read everything that we talk about, and follow us on Twitter at thefullmount. You know, sometimes my personality isn't a cup of tea. It happens. It's what happens when you grew up in New York and New Jersey. It just kind of comes out time and time again. I'm a homer. through and through, as Sean, as you've gotten through. This is through our 6th podcast already.
I can't believe we're still on the air.
I know, right? Usually people get tired of me after a half hour, let alone this has been 7 hours of content we've put out. But we'll be back again, probably the same. We're aiming for this Wednesday recording slot through a Thursday or Friday post. So we're going to try to keep it as regular as possible for everybody. So, it can just easily pop up on the website. So thank you guys for listening. Sean, you got anything else you want to pitch before we go?
No, just thank you for having us on your SoundCloud, YouTube, however you're listening to us. Check us out at thefullmountmma.com, on Twitter at thefullmount.
Yes. Thank you, everybody, for listening. For Sean, I am Brian. We are out.
The TFM Live Podcast is brought to you by thefullmountmma.com. Check us out on Twitter at thefullmount.